A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon, Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
On Yud Bet Be'elul Tovshin Ein Gimel, the 18th of August 2013, Leminyanam, it was reported on an Israeli website by the name of Kippah that HaGaon HaRav Dov Lior, the rabbi of Kiryat Arba, expressed his view that a stainless steel pot does not absorb food cooked in it and may therefore be used alternately for meat and dairy. Does the rabbi agree with the Psak Halacha of HaRav Lior?
Let me begin with a story. Many years ago, I was speaking to a friend and colleague, Rabbi Dr. Moshe Antelman Zatzal, about this topic, and I said to him that it was clear to me that stainless steel did not absorb. In other words, a pot, for example, in which meat was cooked, if the pot is then thoroughly cleaned, washed properly, etc., afterwards, the pot cannot be considered to have absorbed any significant, halakhically significant amount of that meat substance that was cooked in it, and therefore it can also now be used for cooking something which is a dairy dish of some kind. The same would also apply to a pot that in which some forbidden substance was cooked by mistake, shall we say. Let's say meat was cooked in this pot and it became clear this meat was not kosher. After this dish was removed from the pot and the pot was thoroughly cleaned, there would be no anything halachically significant absorbed in the walls of the pot and the stainless steel of the pot, and therefore one could cook in this pot without restriction, without having to do hag'ala, which is to put the entire pot into boiling water. This would not be necessary. This is what I said to Rav Antelman, and he responded and he said, "You're mistaken." And I was a bit surprised, and I asked him, "Really? Why?" He said, "Because there is some absorption." And I asked him, "Well, how much?" And I should point out that Rav Antelman was also a doctor of chemistry. He was active in the field of industrial chemical engineering, and he had a number of doctorates and many patents in this field. He was an expert in this field. He said to me, the absorption is approximately 3 atoms, which of course is such a minute amount that it's almost impossible to measure, and certainly halachically insignificant. So he was really pulling my leg. In other words, he was saying, "You're right, but it's not because in pure scientific terms there is absolutely no residue. There is something, but it's so minute and so irrelevant that practically, halachically, you're definitely correct." With regards to the article to which you refer, which was brought to my attention, it is mentioned in that article that 2 Torah scholars from a yeshiva called Bar-Hayim here in Israel undertook to test scientifically stainless steel cooking utensils such as pots, and they discovered that the absorption is on the order of 1 part in 107,000. I do not know how to compare the figure of 3 atoms that Rav Antelman said to me and this figure of 1 in 107,000. Someone more proficient at mathematics might be able to do that, but it's obvious that this finding proves clearly that stainless steel does not absorb by any means in a way which is halachically significant, because the absorption that the halacha refers to is 1 part in 60. It also should be pointed out that the types of pots that were used for the most part in the time of Hazal 2,000 years ago, shall we say, and such pots are even used today in certain parts of the world, were made of earthenware. These were rough earthenware, unglazed earthenware pots, which are very porous. Anyone who has seen such a utensil, you can still find and see such utensils here and there. certain handmade pottery today is made of such materials, and you can see that it is very porous. You can actually see the pores in the material with the naked eye. In fact, in Arab countries, it was certainly the practice till recent times, in order to cool down on very hot days, they used to fill a jug, an earthenware jug, with water and leave it overnight so it would cool down. And during the day they would take that jug and bring it up to their cheeks, to their faces, and pat their faces with that jug, because the water actually, a small amount of moisture actually seeped through the wall of the jug, and it was enough to produce a sense of cooling on the cheek if touched to the face. In other words, the wall of such vessels is actually, as it were, leaky. The substance inside can actually go right through. And what Hazal were referring to was such a pot as that, so that if a pot of that kind was used to cook, shall we say, meat, let's say, for example, non-kosher meat, seeing that the fact of the matter is, both the halakha and the scientific reality is, that such a earthenware pot, which has a very thick wall to it, you can't make an earthenware pot which is very thin, like a stainless steel pot today. The wall has to be rather thick to be able to remain solid and not break and support the weight, etc. Such a wall of earthenware is considered now to be completely shot through, as it were, with the substance that was cooked in it. So if meat was not kosher meat was cooked in the wall and in this pot, then all the earthenware material of this pot is now considered to be completely saturated with the prohibited substance. And in order to consider food that was then subsequently cooked in that pot, in order to consider it to be kosher, we have to know that there is not more than 1 part in 60 in the substance that was then subsequently cooked, the permitted substance. So in other words, if you took a pot in which non-kosher meat was cooked, and you have to now, what you need to do is to estimate what is the total area, the volume, that is to say, the volume of the walls of that pot, and how much could it be considered to have absorbed based on the total volume of that earthenware. And if that amount is more than 1/60th of the amount of food that was now subsequently cooked in that pot, which is permitted food, then we would not allow that food to be eaten, because such a pot, as it absorbs, also releases this matter that is absorbed in its walls into the new substance, and more than 1 part in 60 would be absorbed, would be released, and that would mean the food is not permitted. And this is written very clearly in the words of the Rambam. There is a discussion, there is a mahaloket amongst the poskim on this matter, whether this halakha applies only to earthenware pots or to pots of other materials such as metal. And interestingly, many of the poskim who discuss this matter did not quote the Rambam on this issue, so I wish to do that right now. The Rambam writes in Ilchot Ma'achalot HaSurot Perek Yud Zayin at the beginning. He writes as follows: Kedera shel heres shenitbashel ba basar nevela u basar shekasim uremasim. In other words, he says a pot made of earthenware, he stresses, shel heres. Heres is earthenware. Lo yivashel ba basar shehuta boto hayom. One is not allowed to cook in that same pot kosher meat after the previous non-kosher meat that was cooked in it has been removed. And if one did so, the second dish that was now cooked in that pot is also now forbidden, because that, as we explained, the entire volume of the earthenware of that pot itself is now also considered to be totally saturated with the prohibited substance, and you would have to have a pot in which the volume of the food in it would be more than 60 times the total volume of the pot itself, of the walls of the pot. And when it comes to an earthenware pot, that is a very difficult thing to achieve. In other words, normally you will not have that much volume in the in the food, as opposed to the volume of the earthenware pot itself. This statement of the Rambam clearly shows that the Rambam understood that this halakha applies to earthenware pots because they do very literally soak up and absorb large amounts of the substances cooked in them, and they cannot be kashered, they cannot be made kosher. This process cannot be reversed. In other words, you cannot take an earthenware pot of this type and place it in boiling water and say now it is as if it was just made today, as if it's brand new. That's not the case. Whereas with metal utensils, such as a stainless steel pot, that is exactly the case. And this is agreed to by all, as we all know, that you can take a pot, place it in, immerse it in boiling water, and whatever it was before ceases to exist. If it was a meat pot, it may be now used for dairy or for Pesach, etc. So this statement of the Rambam it should be noted, is also agreed to by the Ra'avad, who often disagrees with the Rambam. Here he agrees with the Rambam. This is quoted in there's a teshuvah of the Ra'avad in Tamim Da'im, the end of Siman Wow. It's also quoted by the Rashba in Torat HaBayit at the beginning of the Bayit HaRavi'i, a book by the Rashba on these matters. And this svara is also agreed to by the Ra'ah in his Hidushim to Hulin Daf Tzadi Zayin. So we have a very significant school of thought amongst the Rishonim who held that when it comes to a pot not made of earthenware, because an earthenware pot does not release the absorbed substance in it, and is very thick, and therefore the amount of matter absorbed in it is significant. In other kinds of pots, what we need to do is to estimate how much could possibly be absorbed in such material, and also considering the actual thickness of the walls of that material, which in the case of metal pots, certainly modern stainless steel pots, is very, very little. And consider and estimate whether the amount of substance absorbed could possibly be in the order of 1 to 60 parts. So based on what it says in that article, they measured it was 1 in 107,000. According to Rabbi Antleman, in his professional expert view, we're talking about something on the atomic level, and therefore it is clear, and this is what Rav Dov Lior is quoted as saying, in response to these two Torah scholars who wrote to him, reporting to him their findings, that such an amount of absorption is totally irrelevant halachically, and therefore the halachic status of stainless steel utensils, if they are properly cleansed, is equivalent to the status of glassware. It says in the Shulchan Aruch, in Siman Tau Nun Aleph Seif Kaf Waw, in Hilchot Pesach, that glass utensils do not absorb, which is something that is common sense, that one can see with one's own eyes that this is the case. We know that whatever you put in glass is not absorbed by glass. Glass is entirely inert chemically. That is why it is used in the chemistry laboratories, because it does not absorb and does not react with anything. And therefore glass does not absorb, and this is explicitly mentioned in Hazal. It says in Avot Rabbi Nathan that klez zechuchit enam boleim. So it states explicitly. And many Rishonim quote this statement in the Avot Rabbi Nathan, and therefore that is their halachic opinion. It is true there are some who disagreed, and it has always been a mystery to me how anyone could disagree with that explicit statement in Avot Rabbi Nathan from Hazal, and with the fact that we see with our own eyes that it is not so, it does not absorb. So therefore, just as glass does not absorb, which is the view of the majority of the Rishonim, and also the view of the Shulchan Aruch, the Beit Yosef, even though the Ramah differs, but as I said, in Hazal we find explicitly the statement that klez zechuchit enam boleim, and therefore that must be the halacha. And therefore stainless steel, says Rav Dov Lior, is also to be considered like zechuchit, like glass, and therefore does not absorb. There is no doubt, therefore, in my mind that this psak halacha is correct, and I have felt so for many, many years. And this, it should be noted, is very relevant for a number of reasons. First of all, even though most people are used to running a kosher kitchen, are used to having 2 sets of dishes, and that's fine. There's nothing, of course, wrong with that. We're all used to doing that. The fact of the matter is, there may be some people, I'm sure there are such people out there, who for whom it is a financial burden to have to buy an extra pot for cooking this or that, and the fact that one could use the same pot for different kinds of cooking would be financially significant to them, and this is something that people should know. It's also relevant when it comes to mistakes. That is to say, we all know that mistakes can happen in the kitchen. That is to say, a member of the family, very often not the wife, takes a pot and cooks the wrong thing in it, so to speak. In other words, takes a dairy pot and cooks in it some meat or vice versa. And then, of course, the rabbis consulted, what do we do? So the fact of the matter is, if we were to assume that such a pot requires hag'ala, requires immersion in boiling water, then we would have to say that is what you must do before you may now use it for something else, because the pot itself is now considered to be taref, to be not kosher, because it was used for both dairy and then for meat. But if we understand that such a pot in fact absorbs nothing at all, then it is sufficient to clean it thoroughly with hot water, with detergent, and with whatever other substance or device that one uses for such purposes in order to make it thoroughly clean, and then the pot may be used for anything at all. And this is also true for Pesach. What is true during the year is also true for Pesach. And what Chazal say about hametz being asur b'mashahu, even a small amount, does not refer to amounts on the atomic level. We're talking about the fact that whereas during the year we require no more than 1 part in 60, when it comes to Pesach we are more stringent, we're more mahmir, and even 1 part in 100 or 1 in 200 we would not accept as, we would not find acceptable. But when we're speaking about amounts that are basically off the charts, cannot even be measured in laboratory essentially, or with great difficulty only, this is halachically insignificant. This also would be relevant to people perhaps who have relatives who are not observant and who probably use the same pot for cooking dairy and milk dishes, or even for cooking forbidden substances. If the pot was clean, therefore we can state that the food that was cooked in it is definitely permissible. And it also should be stated that even if one could point to the fact that a tiny amount of the substance that was cooked in a pot previously can be discerned somewhere on the pot, one of those difficult to get at places on a pot, if a pot has been washed with hot water and detergent, then any substance left, any matter left in that pot is considered pagum. Pagum means that it no longer basically has the status of food, but rather it is considered to be inert matter. It is not relevant. It cannot possibly affect the taste, the flavor of any other substance now cooked in it, and therefore that is also halachically irrelevant. So yes, I definitely do agree with this psak of Rav Lior. It should be pointed out that Rav Lior is quoted as saying that this is his view, but he, before announcing it in a more public manner, would want 2 other poskim to agree with his position. As soon as I read that, I knew that this was not going to be, because I do not believe that mainstream establishment rabbis, shall we say, will express themselves openly and freely in this manner for all kinds of reasons, even though they probably, many of them, some of them certainly can appreciate that this is the truth. They have their own reasons perhaps for not doing so, and therefore if Rav Lior made his psak conditional on such approbation from 2 other poskim, I immediately said to myself, this is not going to happen. And in fact, since that time about 8 months have passed, I have not heard of anyone else coming out and expressing a view on the matter, which itself is curious. You would think that this matter would be of interest and would be relevant to people, but apparently fear of stating something, a position which is new and unusual, overrides all other considerations. But in my view, this halakha, this psak halakha, is most definitely true and correct and may be relied upon.
Why was this issue not addressed centuries ago and has only come up for discussion recently?
The answer to that is very simple. In ancient times, as we mentioned, the standard cooking utensil In other words, the kind of pot in which people cooked their food was made of earthenware, which, as we explained, was very porous and absorbed very large amounts of the food cooked in it, very significant amounts. Later in history, the pots made of iron became more common, and iron certainly absorbs a great deal less than earthenware, without a doubt, and this is exactly what the Ra'avad, for example, was referring to when he said that when it comes to, and this is quoted by the Beth Yosef in the Shulchan Aruch, when it comes to metal pots, the kind of pot that the Ra'avad could have been thinking of were iron utensils, we have to estimate what could the maximal possible absorption in such a vessel be, which is difficult to estimate with precision, but we know that it has to be also a very minuscule amount, much less, on the order of thousands and thousands of times less than that which is absorbed by an earthenware pot. So iron is definitely different from earthenware, but nevertheless there is some very minimal absorption in such materials. The advent of stainless steel is a relatively recent development. Stainless steel is a material that has not existed for many centuries at all, and therefore this subject was not discussed by Posakim hundreds of years ago. It probably should have been discussed already some decades ago, if not more, but stainless steel is a relatively modern substance, and stainless steel is exactly as the term implies, is stainless. It is rust-proof. It does not absorb. It's a very unique and special substance, and therefore halachically it has the same status as glass, as we explained previously. Sometimes both laymen and rabbis are very reluctant to deal with new realities, particularly with certain realities which have to do with technological advance or changes in society. And this is perhaps an overreaction in the Orthodox world, which after all came into existence. The very word Orthodox was coined in response to the Reform movement in Germany in the early 19th, late 18th and early 19th centuries. There is some truth to the claim that there was an overreaction, and therefore an arch conservatism set into the Orthodox mindset, which essentially made it taboo to admit to any kind of change. But this example here is one that any reasonable person familiar with the halakha, with the scientific realities, should be able to accept and deal with without confusion and without difficulty.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.